What I'm going to be talking about is really one of the main incubators of Western values and freedom, which we haven't really talked about so much at this conference, which is higher education and our universities. Over the last 3 or 4 years, I think we can all gather that something is happening within our universities and that we have a problem. Whether you've followed the case of Jordan Peterson at Cambridge, Kathleen Stock in the United Kingdom, you may be aware Kathleen challenged certain ideas within gender theory and was harassed until she was forced out of the University of Sussex. We've had similar scandals at universities like Edinburgh, Oxford. We've also now seen the establishment of parallel universities, University of Austin, most recently founded because a significant number of academics no longer believe that institutions are able to secure and promote Western values. And we've also seen what I think is quite an important cultural shift in the media, and in particular what you might call the mainstream media, with a number of prominent publications, Wall Street Journal, and most noticeably The Economist, pointing to what I will be talking about today, which is a growing pile of evidence that actually liberty and academic freedom is under threat in significant ways. And in the literature, we've also now seen a number of important publications, The Coddling of the American Mind being the most prominent by Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff, which looks in particular at the rise of Generation Z, or Zoomers, born after 1996, pointing out that they are much less loyal to intellectual freedom and liberty than previous generations. So all of this really has sparked quite a significant debate. What I'm going to be talking about really is the evidence about whether this is as big a problem as we're led to believe. Just before we begin, what is academic freedom? Academic freedom, or liberty, can be defined as the ability of intellectuals to research, teach, and express ideas without risk that they will face a disadvantage for doing so. And that liberty has long been absolutely central to not just higher education, but to Western civilization. It's driven prosperity, it's driven innovation. It allows us to challenge ideas, assumptions, ideologies that are at best misguided and sometimes even dangerous. More fundamentally, it also ensures that our students are exposed to a wide range of ideas, beliefs, and perspectives, and that in turn encourages the well-rounded critical thinkers that we need in our increasingly polarized societies. Academic freedom also helps to explain why universities in the West remain the world's leading universities. Between them, the United Kingdom, the European Union, and the United States account for all of the top 20 universities in the world, and all but 5 of the top 50. And they also wield immense soft power around the world. The UK, for example, currently home to nearly 600,000 international students, around about 150,000 of those coming from China. Today, however, that academic liberty is being challenged on several different fronts. And what I want to talk about really are 4 specific challenges that we can see in the emerging evidence base. The first is the growing ideological imbalance that we can see within universities in advanced Western democracies. It is not true that universities were always imbalanced and what we are living through is the same as what we lived through in the past. The research that we have actually reveals a growing ideological imbalance within universities over time since the 1960s, and also points to the extent to which our universities are becoming ideological monocultures, that they are dominated by a particular orthodoxy, a particular set of ideas. My own research, which you can see on the slide, is based on a survey of academics at the world's most elite universities, the top 10 universities in the UK, the US, Canada, and Australia, and finds that 76% of all academics currently working within the world's most elite universities now identify on the left of the political spectrum, with 21% of that group identifying on the radical left. Only about 1 in 10, 11%, self-identify on the right. To put that in a longer-term perspective, if we go back to surveys that were conducted in the 1960s and look at how the trend has evolved over time, in the UK, where I teach, the ratio of left-wing leaning academics to right-wing leaning academics has increased from 3 to 1 in the 1960s to 8 to 1 today. In the United States, similarly, it's increased from 3 to 1 to 12 to 1. At the most recent general election that we had in the UK, 80% of full-time staff in higher education institutions voted for parties on the left. And this picture reflects wider trends taking place across the world. In the US, scholars such as Sam Abrams have found that the share of professors who self-identify on the left has increased from 40% in the mid-1990s to 60% by the early 2010s, while the political leanings of citizens remained static. So universities are increasingly drifting away from the sort of average public mood. More recent work by Mitchell Langbert, which is based on a representative sample of tenure-track professors, found that the ratio of Democrats to Republicans is now 12 to 1 in the social sciences and major research universities and 13 to 1 in liberal arts colleges. In fact, in some liberal arts colleges in America, in fields like anthropology, communication, race, gender, sexuality studies, there is a perfect monoculture, meaning there is not a single academic who is not on the left. Across economics, journalism, history, law, psychology, just 4% of US academics in his study were registered Republicans. And another recent study of my discipline, political science, by Pippa Norris at Harvard, found that 72% of political scientists around the world lean to the left. These findings do matter. They raise very important questions about the extent to which intellectual liberty in the institutions which are supposed to preserve and promote our values exists, whether it exists, and also whether our students are being exposed to a wide range of ideas and research questions. Secondly, when you have ideological monocultures to this degree, it is often the case that those institutions become openly intolerant of alternative beliefs. They stifle free speech and they lead academics and students to self-censor or to hide their views on campus. In the UK, we've just had 2 very good studies of this phenomenon, one by our trade union, the UCU, which despite saying publicly that we do not have a problem with academic freedom, its own survey found that 1 in 3 academics in the UK are now self-censoring their voice in seminars, lectures, and when on campus. King's College London recently found that 1 in 4 of all university students in the UK now say they are self-censoring when they are on campus. Globally, my own research has found that about 41% of academics in the world's most elite universities now openly say they are self-censoring their views when they are on campus, which rises from 35% in the UK to 50% in America. To put that in raw numbers, it suggests that in the UK around 50,000 members of staff in the higher education sector are currently feeling uncomfortable when they're on campus, and we specifically ask about sharing their political views on campus. There is also a considerable imbalance in the extent to which academics on the left or the right feel the need to self-censor. So when people say, well, this is just academics saying they don't want to share their views on campus, actually what we find is a considerable asymmetry in the extent to which people feel this. If we look at my own research, only 35% of academics who lean to the left, who comprise the majority, feel the need to self-censor on campus. 75% of academics who lean to the right feel the need to self-censor when they're on campus. And that is also true of our university students. About 9 in 10 university students in Britain who say they voted to remain in the European Union feel comfortable voicing their political beliefs. Only about 3 in 10 students who voted to leave the European Union say they feel comfortable sharing their beliefs on campus. In America, Jonathan Haidt and the Heterodox Academy just released a survey last week, the Campus Expression Survey, which found that 63% of college students feel, and I quote, "the climate on their campus prevents some people from saying things they believe," which is up from 55% in 2019. Again, Democrats were consistently the least likely of all to say they felt reluctant to share their views on issues such as gender, politics, race, sexual orientation, while Republicans and Libertarians were consistently the most likely to say that they are now reluctant to share their views when they are on campus. And thirdly, these monocultures really matter because they implicitly encourage the marginalization of non-conformist academics, such as Kathleen Stock, Jordan Peterson, etc., etc. Academics who do not subscribe or who merely challenge the dominant orthodoxy on campus. On one level, this can be seen in prominent individual cases that we've all read about in the press, but it's also actually reflected in more recent systematic research. An organization called Academics for Academic Freedom in the UK now lists more than 100 individual cases of speakers being banned outright from speaking at universities or academics experiencing harassment because of their views, sometimes losing their jobs. Similar research in the United States finds that, by the Foundation for Individual Rights, finds that since 2015, there's been a sharp increase in the number of academics who are experiencing harassment, intimidation, or student protests, and finds that the vast majority of those cases are coming from undergraduate students who self-identify on the left of the political spectrum. So this dramatic increase is reflected in 537 cases whereby an academic has experienced some form of professional sanction over constitutionally protected speech. 2/3 of these cases, about 537, resulted in a sanction, and more than 1/5 resulted in that academic losing their job. They were most often targeted, the survey found, for expressing their views on controversial issues, which is 59% of cases, and almost 2/3 of these incidents came from individuals and groups who self-identified on the left of the spectrum. On another level, this discrimination is also reflected in a rapidly expanding body of research which shows how academics themselves now say they feel quite differently about different groups in society. So in our survey, we asked academics, how do you feel about people who support left-wing parties, and how do you feel about people in society who vote for right-wing parties? And unsurprisingly, given this monoculture, academics were overwhelmingly more likely to say they feel very positive about people who vote for left-wing parties. 64% said they felt positively about left-wing voters. 80% said they felt positively about people who support and campaign for Black Lives Matter. Only 10% said they feel the same way about people who vote for conservative right-wing parties. More research over the last couple of weeks by the Center for Partisanship and Ideology has found that more than 4 in 10 scholars in the United States say they would not hire a known supporter of the Republicans. 1 in 3 in the UK say they would not hire a known supporter of Brexit. And these are large numbers of people. They also find that the vast majority of academics on the right now report a hostile departmental climate. And a significant number of left-leaning colleagues say they would openly discriminate against those on the right when reviewing grant applications, when reviewing job applications, and when reviewing funding, and all of those things that essentially ensure that you can be a successful, productive academic. And this isn't just about left and right. We find that only 1/4 of academics in the US and Canada say that they would feel comfortable having lunch with somebody who held different views on trans issues. Yep. And fourthly, this research points to a sizable and active minority within that monoculture who endorse more radical views on academic freedom and intellectual diversity. When you have ideological monocultures, they tend to encourage the more radical minority to become more visible and more active. And indeed, we find in our survey that about 1/4 of academics do not actually agree with the statement that limits on freedom of speech undermine the core principles on which universities are founded. The good news is most academics do, but there is a visible active minority. And we also find in the same case, a visible active minority who say actually that we should be preventing controversial speakers presenting their views to students. We also find, and I'll begin to come to an end here, that there is a significant number of academics who openly now say that they will prioritize the ideological goals of social justice over the principle of academic freedom. So we find overall that 53% of academics say academic freedom should always be prioritized, even if it violates concerns over social justice. But 27% think ideological goals around social justice should always be prioritized, even if it violates academic freedom. And the way in which that finds its expression is in the growing tendency in the United States, Canada, and increasingly the UK to use things like diversity statements whereby job applicants and grant applicants have to essentially pledge their commitment to the ideological goals of equity and diversity. Now, irrespective of what your personal view is on those issues, that is clearly an ideological litmus test that is being used to essentially screen candidates for research grants and for job applications. And we find actually that 68% of academics now say that is a justifiable requirement to use those litmus tests when hiring academics for jobs and when reviewing grants. So we do have an issue with academic freedom. We do have an issue with how we promote and defend the values within our universities. And I think as intellectuals, academics, policymakers, people connected to government, I think it's about time that we start to think very seriously about how we can defend that liberty going forward. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Matthew, are any universities trying to reverse these trends actively?
Yeah, so what we have in the UK currently going through Parliament on Monday is the Higher Education Academic Freedom Bill, which is the first piece of legislation that I've seen in recent years that is going to make it a requirement for universities to promote academic freedom on campus. And it's going to crucially provide an office for the defense of academic freedom within the Office for Students, which means that let's say you are an academic and you are being persecuted for your views or you're being sacked, as with, say, Kathleen Stock, you are now able to refer to an external body to investigate that case. And potentially universities could now be fined if they are failing to uphold academic freedom. I'm instinctively or was instinctively resistant about using the state to intervene within these institutions, but I've come to the conclusion that these universities are not going to reform themselves. And actually, we are going to need to provide some pretty serious incentives for them to remain committed to academic freedom.
Do you think this is part of a general trend in society of growing intolerance?
I think
or is it the university milieu that sort of supports this?
Well, there are 2 points to that. One is, as we can see in the evidence clearly, this is this trend is accelerating. The picture today is very different from what it was in the 1960s, 1970s. The second key point, I think, is this is clearly contributing to the broader issue of polarization in Western democracies. We need our university students to go through higher education being exposed to a wide range of views, ideas, and beliefs. In some institutions, that is clearly not happening, and it is encouraging the rise of what Jonathan Haidt and others have called emotional safetyism within universities. And that is not a good thing for the defense of liberty in Western societies. We need to ensure that academics and students are being exposed to a wide range of views, not just left and right, but also there are parallel issues here around China, around a whole set of other issues around the sources of university funding, around the impact of internationalization on universities, which is also contributing to this. But I think the evidence that this is fueling polarization, I think, is pretty clear.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.